All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Jesse, how are you doing today? Thanks so much for joining me on the Hot Drinks podcast.
I'm great. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here and to hear your stories. We've had a couple of OB people on, but they all ended up telling Knoll stories because they probably spent more time at Knowles than OB at the time. So this is my first genuine OB instructor podcast with some genuine OB instructor stories, and we're going to have many, many more to come for sure. But I'm excited to hear some of your stories about a place I've heard so much about, but never had an opportunity to work there. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
That's great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear your favorite hot drink when you're out in the field.
So, it's interesting. I did not drink coffee until I was maybe 25 or 26.
Wow.
So initially I was a tea drinker out there. And I remember on a trip, we found a massive bag of coffee. Some other group had left their coffee on a portage trail. And I remember not being all that excited, but my co-instructor, Jeff Stacy, was super pumped because we were definitely running out of coffee. And, eventually I think later that winter, I started to drink coffee, and really I can't imagine not drinking coffee on the trail. And these days when we're tripping with our kids, my husband and I, we do the single filter drip typically. If we're on a backpacking trip, we will bring the little instants, but they're not as satisfying as doing the filter drip. So, and I love, like, we both have our Yetis, and they stay warm all day, or at least for a few hours. And so I kind of sip it throughout the morning in the boat. And yeah, so I'm a big coffee drinker now.
Nice. And do you guys like your coffee the same way?
Yes, same way.
That's convenient.
Yeah, exactly. He probably drinks more than I do, though. We usually make him a second one.
Oh yeah.
Today, yeah.
Have you gotten into the mode of making it while paddling? Have you ever done the raft?
The odd time we will if we stop for lunch, but typically we'll kind of, we know how much coffee we need to get through the day. So typically we prep with thermoses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right
we do not travel light, which is why we are river trippers. Last year we paddled the Spanish and it was super dry. We paddled the west branch of the Spanish, and we did not realize that we had to portage almost everything because the water levels were so low.
Oh, no way.
And we travel with chairs and like giant Wanigan. And so we were slogging, painful. And we were just not light travelers. So,
right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you got to pick your trip not to be light. Which ones you're going to be?
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't think too much of like checking the water levels, whether you should pack light or not, but
exactly.
In this case, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into your first story. You want to tell us a little bit about home place, and this is an area that a place that I've heard a lot about as well. It's kind of the home base for a long, long time of Ontario Outward Bound. Tell me a little bit about the place and what was your experience there?
Yeah, so it's weird. Growing up in high school, I always knew I wanted to be an Outward Bound instructor, and
really?
I thought I was going to be a Knowles instructor. And
how did you hear about it?
I saw the photos in magazines, and I saw and I was just so drawn to it. And those photos just screamed adventure. And I think there was just part of me that knew I needed to be an instructor. Like, it was really interesting because I didn't camp a lot with my parents. We did a tiny bit of car camping.
Where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Guelph, Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went to Camp Wabacon in a couple of summers. I remember chasing around some boys and then going on a 2 or 3 day canoe trip and thinking, this is amazing. And then I worked for some YMCA camps in university and high school. And I was one of their trippers, and I loved it. I love taking kids out there and having them really get into the flow of being out on trail and how amazing that felt. I went to Lakehead for school in the outdoor rec program, and I got a plant biology degree as well. And so my first little taste of home place was actually doing a dog sledding course. So as
Oh.
it was a 3rd-year course that we were allowed to take. And so I got a credit for doing that. And so that was in 1995. And I remember this old rusty 14-passenger van picked us up. I remember thinking that I could put my foot through the bottom of the van. I didn't really quite know how it passed circle check, but
Wow.
yeah. So they picked us up and drove us up, and we did I did a week-long dog sledding trip with some other Lakehead students and saw this magical place for the first time. So home place is 67 kilometers up a logging road. So it's about 2.5 hours from Thunder Bay. And the road is fairly bumpy. It's fairly windy. And you think you're never going to get there. And then finally you arrive and it's this old MNR / I think it was a government funded program. It was a place where they were studying the spruce budworm infestation. And so I think it had been around for 20 years before we actually took over that base. But it's now currently owned by the MNR because home place is not there anymore.
Right. What's the MNR?
Ministry of Natural Resources.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They took it back over.
They took it back over when we decided that we needed to evacuate because of cost.
Right.
Yeah. So home place was there from 1976 until 2004. So it was there for a long time. And I know a lot of people just have these incredible fond memories of this place. And I think, that was a time when I was there from 98 until 2003. There were no cell phones. There was one phone line that was shared among 65 staff.
Was that a radio phone then, or?
It was a radio phone. It was a radio phone, yeah. And yeah, so you might get to talk to your family, the odd time in the middle of the night if you wanted to go. That we were allowed to use the phone from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m.
Oh, really?
So if you wanted to use it off hours, then you could make a quick call. But yeah, it was almost impossible to date anyone that wasn't from Outward Bound.
Right.
And it's amazing because all of my friends that have settled from Outward Bound in Ottawa, they've all met their partner at home place. So
really?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's probably at least eight of us, couples. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And so in a run of it, like say of a summer season, say, mid-June to September or so, how many times would you get out to Thunder Bay, or are you in for the season once you get in there?
Yeah, so the way that it worked is we would typically arrive at home place in June. We'd have 2 weeks of staff training, and then you would have a group for about between 21 or 30 days in July, and then you'd also have a group for about 30 days in August. Okay. So typically you'd spend a few days in camp, getting the kids ready. They're packing out the food and equipment, and then you're off for about 3 weeks. So
right.
Yeah.
So you might get into town between your courses.
So yeah, really. I mean, you would have a 3-day break to Thunder Bay between courses, but most of the people, you'd go into town maybe once in the summer, maybe twice. The staff that worked on the base, they would go in more often, but the instructors pretty much stayed at home place. Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, home place was run on an old generator hospital. So we had power between like maybe 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. And outside of those hours, we had propane lights, or we would have propane heaters in the winter. So the generator, other than that, we didn't have power. So there were times when the generator would break down and we would be without power. Yeah.
Wow.
And
so totally off the grid.
Totally off the grid. It was amazing.
They have like composting toilets, or?
Yeah, we had probably 10 or 12 just shitters, just outhouses. We had one composting toilet that we had some Swiss students come in, and this will be an interview for you to do with Ian Gill or Kevin Farrell. But they were some incarcerated Swiss students that flew in from Switzerland. And they built this outhouse for us. So that was a composting toilet. But the rest of them were all, they were all just, we would move them pretty much every season.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and in the winter, one of the chores was to knock down the shitsicles that would start to form. Every week, somebody had to take a big metal iron stick and like, poke
No.
down the shitsicles so that they didn't reach the top of the outhouse.
Oh man. So pretty primitive.
Yeah. It was super primitive, and I think that was the attraction. Is like we just felt so hardcore, and like when I think back to it, it did definitely create some resilience. And actually, my son is on a pseudo outward bound trip right now. He's 14.
No
So
way.
there's 5 outward bound kids that are off with my friend Helen and Amy. They're kind of doing a mini lead for them in Tobermory.
No way.
I don't think my son's ever gotten this much rain.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's been raining the last couple of weeks.
I know. I keep thinking, oh my goodness, like, how's he doing? And I know I'm having that resilience thought in my head, he's going to have some good stories from this trip.
Right. So the people that are taking them are parents of some other.
Yeah, 2 parents decided they would go out. And I think 3 of the kids are doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is an award that you can do if you were taking an outward bound course as well.
Right.
And so they're actually going on final. They're
no way.
Leading. Yeah, it's a self-led trip for half of the 5 days that they're out there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So Home Place also had 45 sled dogs. Wow. So in the winter we would take these dogs out on dog sledding expeditions. So they had to be well looked after overall the summer, spring, and fall. And then in the winter they were run quite a bit on trips. So we would typically, the trips in the winter were 7-day dog sledding expeditions.
Okay. And how did you keep the dogs busy in the summertime?
The students would come in and play with them, and there were lots of duties. So the students would take dogs out for walks. They didn't get a ton of activity in the summer, but definitely we tried to lead the groups into the yard and have them play when they were on base. And outside of that, it was staff looking after the dogs. So.
Right. On your typical summer course, would you guys come back to the base at all? Would the students be back to the base within the 30 days, or are you gone for the whole time?
Yeah, they would come back. So we'd be there for a couple of days at the start. Occasionally we would do a wilderness first aid course, and then they would typically do a like a big rock climbing day or a whitewater kayak day. They would go on their 14 to 17 day expedition and then come back for cleanup and banquet at the end. So, but we wouldn't come back we would never ever come back in the middle of a trip.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. And the I forgot what I was going to say there. All right, carry on. It'll come back to me.
Yeah. So I had the chance. I worked there pretty much full time for about 6 years before changing careers. But I also was one of the dog sledding coordinators, and I was a course director. So I was in charge of getting all the dog sledding teams together. There were some other amazing dog coordinators. Hugh Dale Harris was a dog coordinator, Jen Gordon. But I had the chance to do that for a year, maybe 2 seasons. I can't remember. But it was quite incredible because you have to take these 45 dogs and their personalities and try to get them on a 6 team dog sled. And you had to make sure that if the dogs ever got bunched up, that they wouldn't fight each other. And some of the dogs we had could be a little bit aggressive. We did get some dogs from not Baffin Island, but up in Inuvik or Iqaluit. So those dogs were a little bit crazy. And then we decided we wouldn't get any more dogs from Iqaluit. We were just going to stick with like more low key dogs from our area. And so we tried really hard to get dogs that weren't going to be fighting on teams. So, but those were very beautiful dogs from up there.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm going to tell a story about, I think it was the winter of 2002. Right. And this is the story of the missing dog sled. Yes.
Missing. The sled is missing or the dogs are missing?
Dog teams, the missing dog sled and team.
Oh, wow.
So I was course directing for a winter course, and I know Sam Weiss, who's a very good friend of mine, was one of the instructors. And so this is her and I, and you're a friend. She's a friend of yours as well. So That's why I picked this story. So the day before the groups head out on their week-long adventure up in Thunder Bay, so typically the weather is like -10, -20. We were really lucky because this day it was only -5.
Oh, wow. Balmy.
Yeah, it was super balmy.
Celsius, of course, for those
exactly.
non-Canadians.
Thank you. So we had to take the dogs out for a little mini adventure to get the students used to how to hook the teams up. So when the dogs know that they're going pulling, they are super exuberant. So they're barking like crazy. Things are very intense. And especially for students that don't know dogs, if you don't understand that these dogs are wanting to pull, they are challenging to control. So we headed out with about, there was myself, 2 instructors and 10 students, and there were 3 teams. So we headed out, we left home place and decided we were gonna head out 5 kilometers away to a place called Mickinac Lake, just for a lunch. So we were having a fire lunch and just hanging out, getting used to leading the dogs and then heading back home. So it was supposed to be about a 2-hour return trip, maybe 3. And we got to Mickinac Lake and things were going extremely smooth. And we decided that we would eat lunch and the dogs were settling in. When you arrive to a place, you tie them out on a tie line. So you take a big rope and all the dogs go to a line and they curl up, and usually we might give them a snack or just leave them. It depends on if they're coming with us overnight, we would feed them an hour or 2 after we pull into camp. But that day they probably would have just settled in and curled up. And when we were ready to leave again, we tie off all 3 of the sleds. And you have to tie the sleds with a proper knot because otherwise the dogs in their excitement would be pulling the sled away. So I always check all 3 knots to make sure they're tied well. And so we're all ready. The dogs are all tied up. They're pulling in their harnesses as hard as they can. And I'm about to give the signal that is like, drop the hand. Okay, first team go. And before I could do that, I noticed that the first team in line, they're already off. They're gone, but there's nobody on the team. There's no instructor. There's no students. Just the team takes off. And behind them.
That's an empty sled?
Yes, they're dragging a thigh-thick dead tree behind them that had been pulled out of the ground. And they're just dragging it behind the sled. And so instead of heading back to home place, they were like, we're not going to home place. We are going down Mickinac Lake and we're going to have an adventure. So that team takes off. Sam and I look at each other and we're like, oh my God, what do we do? And I just said, Sammy, hop on this sled. We're off. So we basically I can't even remember who the second instructor was, but I basically said to them, go back home and get go back to home place, which was 5K away, and get help, because I knew we didn't really know how long this adventure would be.
Right. So and you had a bunch of students there as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So how are they being transported? Like, are they sitting on the sled and then someone's in the back?
Yeah, so they're left with one sled with 11 people. So basically they all had to run home with the dog sled. So 11 of them, basically, some of them probably got to ride and some of them would have had to have ran home that way back.
Wow.
So Sam and I are on this sled and we're thinking, no, the dogs are going to turn around. Like, there's no musher on that sled. Like, they're going to stop and they're going to turn around. But you know what? We just thought, oh, they'll get to the end of Mickinac Lake, which is probably like a 6-kilometer lake, and they're gonna turn around. But nope, they did not turn around. So we couldn't actually see them. Like, they were way
no way.
at one point on the lake, but then they turned the corner and we couldn't. But of course, they stayed on the trail.
Could you? There is a trail.
There is a trail. So we basically snowmobile a big loop. It's about a 5-day loop that we use when we're out with the dogs on our 7-day dog sled trip.
Okay.
So we'll typically do 5 days of traveling, but the students do a night overnight on their own. They do a solo overnight. So you would stay at the same site for 1 or 2 nights and do a solo. So they knew the loop, and so we're thinking, okay, they're now out of Mickinac Lake, they're climbing the hill, and they're on this old logging road. So we're just going to chase them. Sam and I are kind of laughing. We're kind of like crying. We're like, it was crazy. So we're kind of running, we're pushing our sled, and we're trying to go as fast as we can to catch them. And in the end, they actually traveled about an extra 15 to 20 kilometers before they got that tree hung up on another tree.
No way.
It took 15K for that tree that they were dragging to get hung up. And
that was the only thing that stopped them.
Yeah, that was the only thing that stopped them. So they were stopped. We heard the barking. So we knew as we were coming up, we were like, okay, they've either stopped or they've got hung up. And so we arrived, but there's only 4 dogs.
Oh no.
So 2 of the middle dogs had chewed the gang line, and they chewed away at it, and they let Shadow and Solstice, which were the lead dogs, off. So they took off. But then once we got there, we kind of whistled, and out they came from the bushes, and they were like, hey Jeffy, hey Sam, we're here.
Oh man.
And so we tied the dogs off. We got them all stable, and then we kind of took a big deep breath.
How long does this take?
This is, at this point, it's getting dark. Like so this was definitely, like, I think we were aiming to leave that campsite, the original lunch spot at around 1:30 or 2. And by this point, I think it's 4:30 or 5.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, darkness sets in around 5:30 o'clock. So we were there for another 45 minutes, and then somebody did snowmobile up. I can't remember who that was. And they said, I've got some great news. Sandy Ebbs has the dog trailer, and luckily there's a road that was plowed that he could pull up to. And so we only had maybe a kilometer to get the dogs from where we were over to Circle Lake. And Sandy picked us up and saved the day. But it was still another 20 kilometers back to camp. So it was pretty dark when we got back, and they were, it was unbelievable stars. The dogs were so tired, we actually couldn't take that team out the next,
oh, no way.
couple days. They were too tired.
How long do you think they would have ran if
we really don't know. Like, it's so strange, because they're kind of working as a group of 6, and like, it's the lead dogs that are deciding. And, we really don't know. I've often thought that, what would have happened if they never got hung up.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
What is it like at night for them?
Yeah. So
of course.
It's pretty neat. So they'll often, if there's wolves in the area, they'll often howl. It's a beautiful howl. They curl up. It could be cold.
Do you have like hay bales or something that they sleep on, or what do you bring on trip?
The odd time we will drop. The odd time for a couple of dogs, we had Jen Gordon would sew these incredible jackets for a couple of the dogs without big coats, but most of the dogs didn't need it. They would curl up and they would just settle in, and they were pretty comfortable. And the odd time it was a bit cool for them, but typically they toughed it out like we did as well. And there were some very, very cold nights out there. I know the coldest night I ever had was -43 without the wind chill, and I just think, like, I would never do that now. Like,
so funny, hey, looking back.
In a million years, it couldn't pay me to ever do that again.
What is the typical setup for students on the winter trips? Are you in snow shelters, or are you in tarps? Or
we're under tarps, yeah. So we would set the kids. All the kids would be all in a row, and one of their jobs. So at night we would see, because of the spruce budworm, there were a lot of dead spruce trees. So we would burn between 5 and 10 trees a night. We would obviously try not to clear cut the area, but we would have the students drag these trees from pretty far away, and we would buck them down, and then we had to have a big giant fire going. So we would have these massive fire plates that were about 6 feet long, and they would go in the dog sled. It would be the first thing we put in the bottom of the dog sled every morning as we loaded the sleds up. So half the group would be dog sledding and half the group would be skiing. So if you're skiing, you're pulling your poke, and if you're dog sledding, your gear got to go in the dog sled and all the group gear. So yeah, the kids would be sleeping all underneath tarps. We did have wall tents, so if we had to emergency up because the weather was too cold, then we could sleep in the wall tent. But it would get really humid that in the morning it wasn't very comfortable. So typically we only did that if it was emergency situation. Right. And my favorite spot to sleep was always the dog sled. I would just set up a tarp over the dog sled because it was always flat and it was super warm. So I would, unless a student really wanted to try it, I would typically steal one of the dog sleds for me. Nice.
Did you ever have dogs with first aid situations?
We had a couple. We had one time a dog. I remember a dog pooping some underwear, and you know. No. But he was okay. That dog was okay. But see, the dogs would kind of like find things and just eat them. So we found some underwear in one of the dog's poops. And we also, we had some dog fights the odd time where we would have to deal with, we always brought a dog first aid kit. And fortunately, we did have radios with us because of the weather. And so we could radio in if we needed help.
All right. Did you ever have any frostbite issues on those trips? Like winter camping is no joke. Like you got to be on top of it all the time.
Joke. Yeah. So we had, we would often take students out from Toronto, so high school students, and they had to dry out their boots because if they didn't dry out their boots every night, we would have the old big white kind of baffin boots that had the liners in them. Right. And basically, if they didn't dry out their boots, they would be rock solid in the morning. And so, kids, it was a lot of group management in the wintertime for sure.
So they're drying them out on the fire, or are they putting them in their sleeping bag?
They're drying them out in the fire. Typically, we'd ask them to kind of dry them out while we're sitting there, and you would just see all this steam coming off their liners. But if they, if they weren't perfectly dry, they did have to sleep. We always had double bags. So an inner bag and an outer bag, and we would typically ask students to put them between their two sleeping bags. And at night the kids would eat buckeyes, which are basically peanut butter, margarine, and sugar coated. Totally gross.
They must have been thrilled.
Totally amazing when you're out there, coated in chocolate. And so we would ask people to eat one before they went to bed, and it really did warm them up. Or they would eat one in the middle of the night if they were cold. And everybody went to bed with one full hot Nalgene of hot water to keep them warm, and then that way their water wouldn't be frozen in the morning. So It was a lot of group management for sure. And at the time, I had great circulation. I didn't have, and so did a lot of the students that we were bringing out, but it was still a bit dangerous. Like for sure, we had students that said, they can't go on, that we have to like helicopter them out. I remember it, like we had students that had never done dishes before in their life. Like they had never loaded a dishwasher before. So to go from never loading a dishwasher to having to look after your whole self for 7 days and do group work was just unbelievable for them. The transformation in those 7 days was really unbelievable. Yeah. And, they had to learn to be self-sufficient. And we always talked about staying warm really meant working. Like if you moved and if you were always working and always doing things, you would be comfortable. But as soon as you settle in and you're not working hard, then you get cold. So.
Right. Yeah, I know, Noel's winter courses are known as shoveling courses
Yeah.
because they spend a lot of time in snow shelters and
Yeah.
build like
Yeah.
elaborate kitchens, and
Exactly.
it's
Like
just an excuse to shovel.
exactly. I'm sure the outward bound courses were a little higher impact. I mean, you guys like had the little stoves and like, self-sustaining in your backpacks. And here we're traveling with these dog teams. And it was just a little different scenario and situation, but it was
Yeah.
definitely really interesting. It was really cool.
Did you find some of those? I know you had like a lot of kind of not necessarily challenging students, but students with challenging backgrounds. Let's say, did you find that the dogs, like some of them, they talk a lot about animals connecting with maybe youth at risk and people that have different challenges in their lives, and they build these relationships with dogs. Did you see those relationships forming at all, and settling people down?
Definitely. It was
Yeah.
really amazing. And yeah, it was one of the things that we had a lot of youth at risk courses running out of Outward Bound, Home Place. And you would see when the kids were upset and they were agitated, a lot of these kids were quitting smoking for the first time. They're not used to not having junk food, and they're not used to being told what to do. And so that was extremely anxiety inducing. And so taking them to the dog yard was a little bit of heaven for them. And it was really amazing to watch them bond with the animals, for sure.
Yeah.
And, for me, when I had tough courses, I just thought, you know what, at least I have the dogs with me.
Right.
And so I never, in the winter, I always was happy to be out on a dog sledding course because the dogs were truly incredible. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. You want to tell us a little bit about your next story, the 21-day Voyageur leadership canoe trip?
Yeah. So here's another story. It's happened, I think, in the year 2000. Although at the time I was spending about 130 days in the fields every year. So more than a third of the year. So all of the years and all the stories kind of blend together. So my recollection of this story is potentially a little bit different. I actually haven't chatted with Carl Reimer, my co-instructor, about this in 20 years. So I'd love to rehash. Actually, I'm going to send him the link to this story.
Yeah. And we'll get him on and tell the real story.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was working, it was a Voyageur trip. So I think it was about 22 days. And our students started this course with a 2-day wilderness first aid course. And that's where we learned all about the signs and symptoms of how to treat spinal injuries. So this is a little foreshadowing for my story.
Okay.
So we had packed up all our gear and our food, and we headed out to Wagoki Wabakimi and Smooth Rock Lake, which is a really beautiful part of Northern Ontario.
Are most of the trips that are going out from there, are you canoeing out the back door, or are you getting in a van and traveling to your put-in?
No, most of the trips are heading in a van. So the tripping area, we actually could access Lake Nipigon, which is really beautiful. And so oftentimes, like if I was leading a whitewater canoe trip, we would take the train from Armstrong, which was maybe an hour and 45-minute drive to Armstrong, hop on the train, load up all our boats. We would get out at the Allen Water Bridge, and then we would start from there, paddle the Allen Water, which is an incredible river, head up into Whitewater Lake to visit Wendell Beckwith's place, who was a hermit that had invented the Bic pen. So he had a place up there.
Wow.
And then you could actually paddle through a couple of, I think the Kopka, and then get into Lake Nipigon.
Okay.
So we would sometimes solo for 2 or 3 days on Lake Nipigon and then paddle right into home place. So that was, you could definitely start one way, but typically we would get a van ride because it's just where we want to go in the direction of the rivers, basically. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it was mostly river travel instead of lake, or a bit of both?
Lake or river. It depended on whether or not you were doing a whitewater trip or just a freshwater trip. So yeah. And then we had a base at White River, and those were hiking trips on Lake Superior Coastal Trail, which was incredible. So we would do a river trip down the White River, and then we would do a 7-day hiking trip, backpacking trip with the kids.
Right.
Yeah. So that was a 4-hour drive, or maybe 4 or 5 hour drive from home place. And that was a very small base. Yeah. Yeah. So we packed up our gear. We headed out. I think we started right in Armstrong, and we made it a couple days up Smooth Rock Lake. And one of our students was extremely uncertain about wanting to stay. So, we always, not always, but you often get a few kids that aren't sure, they're struggling a little bit. I'm pretty sure this student had to quit smoking as well. And he was fairly negative and hard to handle in the field. Like I remember thinking, oh, I'm glad I'm with Carl. Like Carl was just, he was a gentle giant. He was extremely skilled at soft skills, and he was really great at working with youth at risk. And so after about 2 days on the trail, this student, I think he saw the opportunity to leave. So we were in Outlet Bay. So Smooth Rock Lake is quite a significant lake. And it's an amazing thing about back then is we would see caribou on that lake. So, at that time, there were still caribou in the region. And so we were heading down towards the Berg River. And oftentimes these trails are not well used. So there were tons of blowdowns from probably either a big storm at some point or a small tornado that had gone through. And there were probably 20 to 40 blowdowns over a 300-meter portage.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're, hard to get over. So this student was carrying the Wanigan, which is a big, massive wooden, heavy kitchen, what do you call it? Box. Thank you very much.
With a tump line
with a tump line. And so he was carrying the tump line and he was climbing over these.
Just describe the tump line for folks not familiar with it.
Exactly. So you've got these heavy leather straps around your shoulders, and then the tump line comes up from the back of the wooden box and it goes around the forehead. So you can pull forward and it takes a lot of pressure off the shoulders and the lower back. So you end up taking a lot of weight on the head, which, it's not exactly comfortable, but it does help when you're carrying a really heavy pack.
Why? I know I'm just jumping in here with questions, but I know it's tradition, but like, why would you take a heavy box on a trip that you're going to be portaging? Just because that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, no, it's such a good question. And the iron, the whitewater trips would never carry a wooden box, but this particular trip wasn't a whitewater trip. And so eventually I think we just moved to, lightweight Tupperware with straps. But some of the, we call them cages, some of the cages had all the gear in it and it was just so old school. And so we had an old school box with us.
Right. Okay.
And that was the reality. And so, oh my goodness. So basically he's carrying this box and we're climbing 3 feet over these big blowdowns. Now, 3 feet, if you've done a wilderness first aid course, is definitely the height. It's the magic number when you're dealing with spinal injuries. So if you have had a fall from 3 feet, and there's some signs and symptoms of the spinal, then you have to treat it as such. So apparently our patient fell and he screamed and said he couldn't feel his toes. And he had numbness and tingling. And I thought to myself, oh, here we go.
Did you see it happen?
I didn't see it happen. So I just had to go by his word. And I'm not exactly sure if anybody saw it. Potentially someone did, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So Carl and I got to work and we made a spinal board out of the student foam sleeping pads, and we took paddles that we laid intermittent. So we took 4 or 5 paddles and we laid down the foams and we strapped them down with canoe ties and rope from our equipment bag. And, it took us a good 45 minutes to feel like we got him in there really solidly. And our students were amazing. Like they helped out so much. And so once I got him stable.
What are we going to do with him?
Yeah, well, that's it. So Carl had to, I know this is the thing. Like,
so where were you on the trail? So you're on this portage from one lake to another.
So this is the crazy thing. So at this point he had walked to the end of the trail, but he said, I'm feeling numbness and tingling. I fell 3 feet. So basically I said, okay, hands on spinal.
Sweet.
I laid him down. And so this is the thing, like we were at the end of the portage about to go on the Berg River, which was just a slow, like kind of slow moving swift water river that was heading down. So we weren't on a whitewater trip, but this was moving water. And so we laid him down, and he was on that spine board, but he had never thought in my head, oh, well, if I'm a spinal victim, I'm going to have to be lying here for 3 to 4 hours. Well, the air helicopter comes in. So Carl sets off with the student back down the portage, carries the boat back. And then, we didn't really know how long it would take them. We knew that
So you were calling,
yeah,
you assessed them for spinal. So you had potential for spinal. So you were calling out for an evac. What communication were you using back then?
Nothing.
How did you get the word out to get a helicopter in?
So Carl had to find a boat and flag it down. So Smooth Rock Lodge was actually one of our evac points. So when we get maps and we're given maps, we always know where the evac points are. And so we track back when we know we have to.
And an evac point would be like the nearest road, or?
No, evac point would be location to reach help. So Smooth Rock Lodge had a satellite phone. Okay. And so we were able to use that and call for help.
Great. So no ground air radios or anything, huh?
Nothing, not at that time. No. Yeah. So, at that time, this was old school, 1999, 2000. Yeah. And, instructors were just counted on to deal with risk management in the field and make good decisions. So, so Carl headed off with the student. I think he flagged down a boat. It took him a couple of hours. And then that boat drove him to the lodge. He made the call. And then the boat drove Carl back to the outlet bay, and then Carl and the student portage back in. So just as Carl was pulling out, it was probably 7:30 p.m. We hear the helicopter, and the copter comes in. And so it was really great timing that Carl had just gotten back. And meanwhile, I'm dealing with the student that's slightly non-compliant, but also just wants to go, right? So, he asked us a number of times to untie him, that he was fine. But then, of course, he was just unreliable. And at this point, I'm sort of thinking, we're not calling off the air ambulance, and we're not crying wolf. You're going. Sorry, kid, you're out of here. So this is where it gets awesome. So we see the air ambulance, and they can't land anywhere. It's kind of boggy. We're in a river. It's tight, and so you see him dropping down. And I look over, and there's a rookie on the flight that decides that either he decides or the team says, okay, you're going to jump out on the shore of the river and go and see what's going on. So he,
just before you get, did you you were kind of expecting a helicopter at some point. Did you think of that when you stopped where you stopped and put him in the spine board? What were you thinking? Like, a helicopter's going to come, where was it going to land?
I know, this is the thing, our spine board wasn't all that stable enough to move him, right? Yeah. So had it been a real board, we would have maybe potentially loaded him onto boats, but I just thought the risk was too high. Yeah. So at that point, I just thought, they know where we are. We're not moving. Right. We're going to stay where we are, and then figure out where to land. So figure it out. So the rookie basically says, oh, I'm just going to jump into the water. So
this is the medic?
This is the medic. So he's in his cotton suit. He's got his helmet on. He's got his radio. He's got no life jacket. He jumps into the water, but it was super deep. He actually got flushed down the moving water, and he
jumped out of the helicopter into the river.
Into the river. And I guess in his head that he thought he was gonna just land in really shallow water
and just wade over to where you guys
wade over to where we are, but it was over. He's drifting down. So I said to Carl, you gotta go get him. So he and a student hopped in a boat. They paddled over to get
no life jacket.
No life jacket. And so all three of them wandered back to where we were. And so at this point, the medic is shivering. So I'm getting him a fleece, and he's shivering. But not only is he shivering,
what's the helicopter doing at this point?
So they're finding a way to land. So actually, they did find a spot a couple hundred meters down the river to land. So all the medic is thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get so teased. Everybody's going to tease me.
Oh, really?
So in his head, he's spiraling because, he's just nervous about having just jumped into the water. And
is he assessing the student at all, or is he shutting down?
at this point, like I get him a fleece, he's shivering. So I'm trying to, and I think he's in a little bit of shock.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just say, okay, we're all good. And then one of the other paramedics who lands wanders over. He cuts through the bushes and made it over. So I think there were two of them plus the pilot. And so so they kind of assess the student and they say, great, we're going to transfer him, but we have to get him downriver to the helicopter. So we actually lashed all the boats together and we loaded him across all of the gunnels. And
Did they bring a backboard at that point?
At that point, they had actually, no, I don't think they had a backboard with him until we got over, you know what, I'm not sure. Either the backboard transfer happened there or at the helicopter. Yeah. I can't actually remember that. But they did say to us, wow, this is such a good backboard. We could just take it with us. And I said, nice. You know what? That is so flattering, but we actually need those paddles to get down the river. So that's a hard no.
That's funny.
So they were really sweet. Like, honestly, I think, yeah, they were really great. We said goodbye to the student and that was it. And we had a massive debrief with our group the next day. We obviously didn't move. We set up our tents in it wasn't really a campsite. It was just a random spot on the river. And I think that the next morning we paddled into Whitewater Lake and had a wonderful debrief. And, I really feel like that's a story that nobody in that group will ever forget because, And, in the end, I heard that the kid actually wanted to come back, but there was no way that was going to happen. So he was discharged from the hospital with a very healthy spine. He may have had a little bruise. I'm not exactly sure. And he had a 20-hour bus ride back to Toronto to either look forward to or dread, one or the other. So.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So the rest of the trip, we had our students at Outward Bound. They basically learn the ropes for the first week. And then they typically go on a 2 or 3 day solo. So we send them off with a tarp and a bug net and all of their stuff with a tiny little bit of food. And then, like, I think we send them off with pea soup and some gorp and nothing, like barely any food at all. And then they come back from that solo and we usually have a huge banquet. So my specialty was I would usually make cinnamon buns for them in a Dutch oven, and I would usually make sushi, some sort of rolls, and they loved it. It was great. And so they come back and we do a big debrief and talk about their experience on solo. And then they would head out on final. So final would mean they lead, they follow the maps, they choose where they're going to camp, and they get us out to where the van is going to meet us, unless we were paddling right into home place. And it was, sometimes it was a disaster, but most of the time it was very successful.
On final, you're with them? You're just kind of silent, or are you trailing like behind?
So we're silent. Oftentimes we would give them 3 questions. So 3 questions that they can ask over the 3-day period. Sometimes we would follow them and obviously camp with them. But if the group was really independent, like on our leadership courses, and I ran a couple of instructor courses to train the instructors, and we would camp away from them and just let them do their thing. So it was a neat way to foster independence and help build confidence.
Right. Are there many bears up in that area, black bears?
Definitely. Yep. Yeah.
Was that ever an issue for the solos? Like, how did you do bear prevention while they're on solo?
Yeah. So none of the bears are habituated up there. One student had set her solo spot on a game trail. So she had a moose like right through her campsite. That was pretty scary. So we moved her. But typically bears weren't really an issue. I remember on the Albany River, we had a very curious bear wander around our tent. But I never had any bear issues on expedition. We did have bear issues around home place once in a while. I remember leaving there was an apple crisp left out on top of our Wanigan. And then we left to do some sort of debrief on the beach, and we came back and the apple crisp was gone. And we thought, okay, this is whoopsies. So there were, there were bears around, occasionally around home place, but on the trail, those bears are all pretty timid. So
Yeah. Never an issue.
Never an issue, really. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure that was definitely an experience that that they wouldn't have forgot. Wow.
Yeah, sure.
Did you ever hear anything from the helicopter folks or the guy that
No, never
jumped in the
did.
river?
It's funny. Actually, Carl is a firefighter in Thunder Bay, and so
Oh.
I should ask him because
Yeah,
I
if he ever runs into
well
it.
connected to those guys. So one of the things I want to do this summer is reach out to him and just talk about that story with him.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow. That's amazing. Wow, these stories are great. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome. Just before we get to our rapid fire questions to clue up here, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and how people can reach you, because I know you do have your own business going here in Ottawa. And yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I actually left a home place in 2003 to become a naturopathic doctor. So I went back to school for 5 years, and I graduated in 2007 and started my practice in 2008. And so I've been in practice as a naturopathic doctor in Ottawa for this is my 15th year.
Wow.
And what I love about it is, I use herbs, like I was always really connected to nature when I was out on trail, and I did a plant biology degree. And, the energy of being in the forest, this is what I love. This is what I crave. This is what feels so good. And so I can kind of bring that to my lifestyle and my practice. So a lot of what I do in practice is dealing with health prevention and eating really healthy, and so that's been really great, because I've actually found that by recommending to my patients to spend time in nature, they often feel better, and especially in a forest, because the trees are really grounding. So so I've been in practice 15 years, and ironically enough, I actually treat a lot of Lyme disease, and Lyme has become an epidemic. I know back in the day when we were in Thunder Bay, there wasn't a lot of Lyme. There were ticks around, but not many, and not too many people that have acute tick bites. And I think now it's becoming endemic in the area. So I use a lot of herbs actually to treat Lyme and co-infections. So
wow.
Yeah.
Do you do any online consultations, or is it all in person, or local?
Yeah, I do online and I do in person, and I can treat anyone in Ontario, so it's great. So I do have patients from Southern Ontario. Yeah, the neat thing about the COVID is that it's actually expanded our ability to see online now. I still prefer to see people in person, although with COVID it's been a bit of a challenge. But connecting one-on-one and connecting in person is always my preference.
Yeah. Awesome. How could people find you if they want to touch base with questions?
Yeah. So they can find me they can find me at biohealottawa.com, and I'm actually just working on a website as well for myself. It'll be drjessiepierce.com. So I've been in practice 15 years and I've never had my own website. My web developer thinks that's hilarious because he knows how busy I am. But again, it's word of mouth. I like seeing people that way. And so, so you can find me, you can look me up at biohealottawa.com or eventually drjessiepierce.com later this summer.
Awesome. That's fantastic. All right, let's jump into our rapid fire questions. So just kind of 1-2 word answers. First thing that comes to mind. What's your favorite location to lead trips?
Northern Ontario.
Yeah. What's your favorite piece of gear?
Oh my gosh. That is a tough one. I guess I like my Scout tarp. It's small and cute and awesome.
I just took mine down about an hour ago. We had a birthday party in the backyard yesterday with some rain. And so I did some tarpology in the backyard. Saved the party. Yeah.
That is amazing.
That is a great.
We used ours over Christmas. Same thing. Like we wanted to have Christmas with family members. So we set up our tarp in the backyard and it was great. It was wonderful.
These Scout tarps are from MEC, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and they're super lightweight, those silicone nylon. And yeah, it's an important piece of equipment. Great. What's your best backcountry costume that you've seen or that you've used yourself?
Oh my goodness. So you know what, we used to have this crazy helicopter. There were fires around home place one year, and somebody left a helicopter flight pilot helmet, and it got left behind by one of the
Wow.
helicopters. And so we used to hide that in people's gear at the
No
bottom.
way.
At the bottom, it's
Oh, yeah. How did
so
you
at
do
the
that?
bottom of their equipment pack, if we wanted to play a prank, we used to stick that in somebody's pack. So, you know, the first night out on trail, they're out for another 21 days, and then, you know, they have to carry this
Oh,
helmet around.
man.
So yeah,
Wow.
that was pretty fun. And yeah, lots of, oh my gosh, it's so fun to go out with costumes for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. What did you love most about working in outdoor education?
For sure, inspiring people, I mean, connecting with other people outdoors. Like, I am a people person, and I just feel like it's a way to connect with people and to connect with nature in such an incredible way. And if you can teach people how to feel connected to the land, then it's just such an amazing thing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Last one. If you could go back to any one location and share a hot drink with somebody, what location would it be?
Oh my gosh, I would definitely go back to home place, and I would
Yeah.
go back with all of my friends from the 2000s. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, if I could just grab them all, I would probably, like, right off the bat, I would probably choose, I mean, it's hard. I can't choose just one. Kelly Pickens, she was she was our leader, Ling reader. You have to interview her. She was the director up there.
Right
Kelly,
on.
I'd probably choose her and give her a big hug and just reminisce up there.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Jesse, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking some time today to speak with me, and I look forward to connecting in person soon.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's nice that we are both in Ottawa, but yeah, COVID's going away quickly, hopefully, and yeah, let's maybe try to connect at the end of summer.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, awesome. This has been great. All right, well, I really appreciate it. I'm gonna end it here, and yeah, this will come out in a couple weeks, and I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Awesome.
Take
Well,
care.
you have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.